everyone, it's Littypants and welcome back to the channel. I'm so excited to be back. I feel like I'm making like a comeback, like this is my grand debut back to the channel. I did do Bookmas last December if you didn't see that, but this is gonna be like one of my first few videos going out of the year, coming back. Littypants has come back. Guys, Littypants has come back. But I'm actually so happy to be back. I'm so excited to film this, like I'm jumping in my pants. I'm jumping, like I'm so excited to start filming again, and I don't know, I'm just excited for the content that's to come. I don't know what it's gonna be, but hopefully you'll stick around for the ride. But today I'm gonna be talking about the 32 books I read in 2025, and I just kind of want to talk about them. I have some that were really good, I have some that were amazing books. I actually feel like 2025 was an amazing reading year for me. I feel like I discovered so many new books that I hadn't even heard about, but I just picked up and they were honestly new favorites. And I read a few bad books, but it wasn't too many bad books, so I think last year was actually a pretty good reading year. And what else can a reader ask for, honestly? Alright, so starting off bad, because we're starting with the 1 stars. My lowest book of 2025 has got to go to Heartbones by Colleen Hoover. Honestly, if you're reading Colleen Hoover in the big year of 2026, what are you doing? Like, there's so many better books out there, and Book Talk might be recommending you to read these easy little books, but they're honestly trash. Like, it's like getting McDonald's, but like the book version of it. Heartbones is just basically this goofy romance story between this guy and this girl. I don't really remember. Nothing really happens besides the fact that this is probably a spoiler if you don't want to know this, but I'm pretty sure he goes to jail and then she waits like 4 years for him to come out for them to finally be together, even though they only knew each other for like 1 month of the summer or something like that. I don't know. I just did not find it romantic. It was not entertaining and it was honestly really stupid. But that's my lowest book of the year. So for the next 1 star book, I have The Perfect Marriage by Geneva Rose. I had to read this book for book club, and honestly, okay, so I don't really read, like, I guess thriller books. I don't really read that genre. But the more I read it, the more I'm starting to lose respect for the genre. Just because, like, who reads these books? Okay, so basically, it's just like a big plot twist. Like, all these, like, crime or thriller books always have, like, this crazy plot twist that, like, oh, I did not see that coming out of nowhere. But in this book, it's just so unrealistic. And that's how all of them are. Like, it's the craziest plot twist that, like, honestly doesn't even really make any sense. And, like, you can see coming from, like, 30 miles away. It's just like, I don't know, it's entertaining, like it's easy to get through. I will say that, like, all thriller and like horror or like crime books I've ever read are really fast to get through because you're just like basically every chapter ends in a cliffhanger. I don't know, like these books are just not for me, honestly, and The Perfect Marriage was a really big flop. All right, and then my last 1 star read for 2025 was Dream Over by Dani Diaz. This was the one and only graphic novel I picked up in 2025, and I honestly feel kind of bad saying that I gave this book 1 star. I honestly do not think I was a target audience for that at all. I'm pretty sure it's like middle grade or probably even lower, but the story one just made no sense, and I was like, what is going on? And also was kind of depressing. Basically, it follows these two kids like in school, I'm pretty sure, and something happens to where like they're sucked into dreams or something like that. And I just remember being so anticlimactic. I don't know, just definitely I've read so many more graphic novels, even young adult or like middle grade graphic novels that are just so much better than this one in particular. I kind of feel bad saying that about this one just because, like I said, I know I'm not the target audience, but regardless, I would never recommend this graphic novel even to a young kid. The first 2 star book on my list is Eat the Ones You Love by Sarah Maria Griffin. So when I picked this book up, it was honestly just like on a whim. During that time, I was working as a florist, and it's like a book that takes place in a floral shop. So I was listening to it at work. It was an audiobook, and I was like, this is honestly perfect. Like, this fits the vibe so much. Like, let me just listen to it. And at first, it was kind of intriguing, but I guess since I went into it not knowing anything about it, it ended up becoming like this weird sci-fi book, and it was just a little too weird even for me, honestly. Like, basically, this lady falls in love with an orchid at the flower store. It honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, it reminds me a lot of The Little Shop of Horrors, because like kind of the plant takes over the store. But the only thing is, in this one, like they get kind of freaky like halfway through the book. Like, her and the orchid start like being sus, and it's like, what am I listening to? I don't know, that was just really weird for me. Like, I don't know. And then it's like a sapphic romance, so at the same time she's like in love with the shopkeeper, and the shopkeeper is like trying to get her away from this like giant orchid, but she's like attached to the orchid because the orchid like is like sending its like little buds inside of her, and she's like smelling it all the time, so she's like low-key brainwashed by this plant. And I was like, what am I listening to? I don't know. I'm actually kind of surprised I even gave it 2 stars. It kind of made me uncomfortable. Even thinking about it now, it's still making me uncomfortable. So, like now looking back, I should have given that like a 1 star, but whatever. That's my first 2 star rating of last year. Okay, the next 2 star is The Pumpkin Spice Cafe by Laurie Gilmore. This book I know is like fanfic basically, or like glorified fanfic for the Gilmore Girls. Obviously, you just heard the pen name is Laurie Gilmore. The main character is supposed to be based off of Luke from Gilmore Girls, and I love Luke. I'm a Luke sympathizer till the day I die. I'm kind of just sick of these romance novels where it's the same exact cookie cutter characters. The girl is small, petite, cute, big brown eyes. You know, she's kind of dumb and like she's trying to save the town or save a small business. She's trying to make this leap, but she can't because past trauma is holding her back. It's always the same thing. And then the guy, he's kind of a little grumpy and he also has some daddy issues or mommy issues. He ends up telling her like, no, you can do this, and then she gains enough courage to leave. And there's a stupid like third act conflict where like they have some stupid miscommunication and then they just don't end up together, and then they finally separate and she moves to wherever and he moves to wherever, and at the end they end up realizing that it was all miscommunication, and then they get back together and the story ends. And I'm like, okay, it's the same thing every time. Because honestly, I'm not a hater towards the romance genre, but when I pick romance books up like this, I become a hater because like what was that? I don't know. It's just the same as always for me. I can't like these books. It's really hard for me to. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say that this was a 2 star book. Alright, so the next book for me is The Firekeeper's Daughter. I also feel kind of bad not liking this book just because I know this book actually has really high ratings, especially on Goodreads. This is another middle grade book. I think I do good with middle grade if it's like fantasy or sci-fi, but whenever it's like coming of age, it is a little bit harder for me to get into it. And this one had a lot of elements that I just personally could not relate to. None of the aspects that I find appealing. Like, I didn't find her cultural aspects that appealing. I could not relate to like her indigenous culture and lifestyle. The romance was not it for me. I don't know. I didn't really care for the character. I'm pretty sure his name was Jamie. And then also like the drug backstory where like the cops or something, that also was kind of just like there. I also remember this book being really long and like low key really hard to get through. I usually do good with long books, honestly, especially if the story, is keeping me engaged the whole time. But this book, I feel like it just had a lot of nothing. I don't remember. I read it a long time ago, so this might be completely wrong. Like I said, I know a lot of people love this book, but for me personally, it wasn't it. All right, my next 2 star rank is probably gonna be a little controversial, but it's Twilight. I actually have like this love-hate relationship towards Twilight, the franchise. Look, I love me a good Twilight movie. Like if it's October and the weather's cozy and the wind's blowing and I can hear Jacob's howl outside, I want to watch the movie. Where the hell have you been, Loca? You know what I'm saying? But this year I made a mistake and decided to try and pick up the books, and I should not have done that. Honestly, the only reason why I feel like I didn't like the book a lot is because it's exactly like the movies. My family had been telling me that like the book is exactly like the movies, but I was like, surely it'll have more like details and stuff. No. I mean, it has more details of you just being inside of freaking Bella's mind, but that's kind of not the place where I wanted to be, so I don't know why I put myself there. But I guess all that to say that Twilight the book is not for me, but Twilight the movies is for me. Even though I also don't give the movies that high of a rating, if I'm being honest, so don't ask me what I would rate the movies. Alright guys, so my next 2 star rating is actually 2.5 stars, and that is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I'm actually really sad that I had to give this book 2.5 stars because I really, really wanted to like this book. I really love fantasy and science fiction, so I was thinking like, oh, of course I'm gonna like this. It's a story about nature fighting against people and people who are able to control nature, and how that leads to segregation in society between people who are able to use like nature powers and people who aren't. I actually liked the story. I liked the world and the concept. The writing, I don't know, the writing was just really weird. I feel like the whole time the author is trying to create this like really unreliable narrator, which I can understand. Like, okay, I've read a lot of books like that, but this one was just trying a little too hard to create that unreliable setting and narrator to where like nothing was getting answered. Every chapter I'm just frustrated with like the character and her mind, and And the thing is, in this book, you switch between like three different characters. So every chapter you're reading from someone's perspective, but like I'm still pissed because I don't understand what any of them are actually saying. It's not because it's like hard language or like hard words, vocabulary, whatever. No, it's just the sentences are just like super vague like all the time. From the start, I could kind of understand because I'm like, okay, you're building that world, the atmosphere, but by the end, bro, like lose the act. I'm trying to figure out what's going on. And I'm really sad because I actually have the second book. It's over there, The Obelisk Gate. And I think I will try to continue the series just because, like I said, the world is really intriguing and very different from any other like fantasy or sci-fi that I've read at least. And I know people say really good things about this series, so I think I will continue it since I already own the second one. But just the first one, not my favorite. But I think if I maybe read the second one, I can, get used to that writing style a little bit more. But if you guys have read this book, let me know what you think. Okay, so my next book is a 3-star book, and that is Remarkably Bright Creatures. I'm just really sad that I had to give this book 3 stars. I was really hoping for a higher number for this book because I personally just love anything that has to do with the ocean. When I saw this book cover, I was like, this is beautiful. I need to own this. I need to read it. But my issue is that I kind of just pick up books on a whim. I don't really read the dust jackets. I don't really watch videos on them or anything. I just pick them up just because I'm like, this looks like a vibe, like let's see what happens. So I just picked this book up because it had like an octopus on the cover. And previously I had read Shark Heart, and Shark Heart is one of my favorite books of all time. I read that book back in 2024, and I guess I kind of had the idea that it was going to be kind of like that, like not a romance, but like a book that focused on the connection between the octopus and the main character. And it ended up being this like kind of feel good found family type of book, which I liked but also didn't love. You know what I mean? Like it was okay, it was feel good, but for me it was a little too feel good. The stakes were not high enough because I like someone to be like about to die in my books. I don't know, I want there to be like some oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? But in this book I felt like it was more realistic, I guess, even though I know there's like a talking octopus, that's not very realistic. But like the main story that was going on, because the octopus was kind of just like there, like he kind of didn't have much to do with the story. I'm so sorry, Marcellus. I love the idea of him, but in the story, he kind of didn't do much. So, I don't know, the story just kind of didn't do it for me. But if you're into like that really nice kind of story about like a found family, well then, pick this book up. But for me, I would not reread this book. Okay, so the next book that is a 3-star rating is The Ashes and the Star-Cursed King, which is the second book in the Crowns of Nyaxia duology. I don't know how you say that. Nyaxia? That's how I was saying it in my head. Oh, it's part of the Nightborn duet. I really actually like the first book. You'll hear that it's later on the list. But I guess the second one, I'm gonna be so honest, I don't remember what happens. I feel like I was just, again, kind of sick of the main character energy that Oriya gives me. She's the same as all the others. I don't really have much to say about this book, honestly. I really like the first one. The second one just didn't do it for me. I really wanted to like this duology because personally I love romantasy. And I also really love vampires. And this book I was like, oh, vampires? This is going to be amazing. But for some reason, I just couldn't click with Oriya, which is our main character. I liked Rain, but I guess their romance wasn't enough for me to really love this book. I gave it a 3 stars, which I think is still pretty good. It was a fun time. It was a nice end to the story. I did miss them when it ended, but it's not something I absolutely love like other romantasy, other fantasy books. Peep the back that I've read. So this one just got a 3 stars. All right, moving on to our 4 stars. The first book on this list is The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. You guys know The Housemaid. Y'all know Sydney Sweeney, right? Also, if you're wondering what I'm looking at, I do a lot of journaling and book journaling, and I actually have another video coming up or coming out on setting up my 2026 reading journal for the year. So if you're interested in that, make sure to go check it out on the channel. Here's the page, by the way, if you're wondering. But anyways, this book was actually pretty entertaining. It was slightly a redemption for the thriller genre, but again, it's not really a book that was like, oh my gosh, that was so amazing. Like, that was the best book I read all year. No, it was just a good time. It was kind of dumb, and the writing was kind of stupid. But the thing is, the writing on these stories is so easy to get through that you honestly fly through these books. I think I finished this book in like a few days. And, the twist was 4 stars because it was fun. I'm not gonna lie, it wasn't good. It wasn't amazing, but it was fun. So I'm gonna go ahead and give Frida McFadden 4 stars on that one. The Housemaid, there you go. Alright, so the next 4-star read I read in 2025 was Big Town by J.N. Sadler. So this book, I literally have never heard of it before. It literally, I think I'm the first person on Goodreads to like add this book to my list. But I picked this book up from a library book sale and I was really intrigued by the premise of the book. Basically, it's about this facility, this government facility where they get people to come in and start this program to lose weight. It's like a painless way for them to lose weight. It's basically like Ozempic. But what they do is they suck out all of the fat from the people and they use the fat or like grease, I don't really know, to like power up certain parts of the facility. And they're basically like farming these people, they're fat farming these people in order to use their fat as like an energy source. It's really weird, honestly, and it was kind of a vibe. I gave it 4 stars. I think it's an older book. I don't know, this picture looks pretty old. But I don't know, like, it was just there at the book sale. All the books at my library book sale was like 75 cents. And it was really short. Like, look how small this book is. And I was just like, you know what? I'll pick it up. And it was interesting. You know, it's intriguing. That's actually the facility right there. And I guess this is the facility, and I guess these little balls are the people going in. It kind of made me think of Flatland, where it's like this alternate reality, kind of dystopian vibes. But it was actually pretty interesting. You know, if you're into like that weird sci-fi stuff, maybe pick this book up. But I feel like this would be really hard to find. Maybe Amazon has it, but I don't know. But Big Town, you know, Big Town, 4 stars, Big Town. Why does it making me think of freaking Ice Spice? Big Town. Big Town, Big God, Big Town. Okay, so Sea of Tranquility was a pretty good read, honestly. I gave it 4 stars because it was definitely different. It's like a sci-fi book about um, a virus that is taking over the galaxy, honestly, because people are traveling across different worlds in this book, and the virus is spreading through like the solar system or something like that. It's like far into the future, so I honestly don't really remember how the like system works with the traveling and stuff. But it was pretty cool because this was the first book that I've ever read that has to do with the C-19, if you know what I'm talking about. I think it was pretty interesting. I feel like it has a really cool twist at the end, which I did not see coming. I don't know, I'm really bad at picking up on twists. So if you read this book and you're like, that was the easiest twist I've ever seen in my entire life, then my bad. But I actually thought it was pretty interesting. It has kind of a time travel element in it. I'll leave that little sprinkle right there. But it's definitely an interesting book, and I actually think I would read it again just so I can see if I see the twist coming a little sooner. And it was also a really easy read. I'm pretty sure this book was like maybe between 200 and 300 pages. It wasn't that long. So if you're interested in a small little time travel book about a virus, I would pick this up. I really like speculative fiction, and I think I had seen it as like recommended under that genre. So that's why I picked it up, and it was actually pretty good. Alright, guys, so the next book on my list is Room by Emma Donoghue. This book was really intriguing and interesting just because of the perspective that it's told from. Basically, the premise of this story is it's about a young woman who was abducted at a young age by an older man, and she's been kept inside of his shed in his backyard for around 5 or 6 years. I don't remember how long, but she ends up becoming pregnant with the abductor's like baby, and she gives birth to him, and it's a little boy. And so the story is told from the little boy's perspective of like living in this room, which is like the only thing he's ever known because they're both obviously being held hostage in there. And this story is just really interesting just because you really do see it from the little boy's perspective, and it's honestly really saddening because as you read, you realize that he knows nothing about the outside world. You know, room is all he knows. And this book is just really different. So if you're looking for something kind of like a thriller or a crime, I honestly think this book is so much better of a twist or like story in general than the other books I mentioned, The Housemaid and The Perfect Marriage. Those are also like crime mystery kind of ones, but this one is just so much deeper than those could ever dream of being. It felt so much more real, the perspective, the storytelling, the writing, everything. I just really like this book. I will say that the second half for me isn't as impactful as the first half. I won't say why, but basically you follow the boy the whole story. So the second half is a little bit slower, which does kind of suck. I think that's why I ended up giving it 4 instead of 5 stars. But there is a movie for this book, so if you just want to watch the movie, you should probably check that out. I watched the movie, but I didn't finish it, I'm pretty sure. I think I didn't finish it because of the second half like plot, honestly. But anyways, so if you're interested by the story that I said, but don't necessarily want to pick up the book, the movie is right there, so you should probably go check it out. All right, the next 4-star read is actually The Buried Giant by Kazuo Ishiguro, which was one of the books I read during my 12 Days of Bookmas challenge. It's right here actually. Kazuo Ishiguro, again, like I said many times in my Bookmas, is just an amazing author. He has this way of writing where there's just so much nuance and so much power behind his words, although they're so simple. Like, they're so easy to read in a way to where like it's not confusing, it's not necessarily complicated. Like, a story is there, but underneath the story is such a deeper message. I don't know about you guys, but usually when I'm reading the book, I'm looking for the title in the book. But whenever Kazuo decides to put the words "the buried giant" in the story, this man knows what he's doing. He is an amazing author. Like, I don't even want to say what the buried giant is, because whenever that came up in the story, I was like, how did he do that? It follows a man and wife who live in this village where everyone's memories have basically been wiped by like this mystery smoke or this mystery steam that's making everyone very forgetful. And they're very nervous because their relationship, obviously as husband and wife, relies a lot on memory. You know, a relationship with anyone would rely a lot on y'all's past experiences together, what y'all have been through, you know. And they get nervous because they realize that they don't remember things anymore, so they decide to leave the village where the mist is at, basically, and start leaving to go look for their son, who they don't remember anymore. So you basically just follow them, and they meet a lot of characters. I said this in my 12 Days of Bookmas, but this story reminds me a lot of Don Quixote by Cervantes, just because of the characters and also the setting. We have a lot of knights and dragons and stuff, and I guess it just made me think of Sancho Panza. If you've read Don Quixote, you probably know what I'm talking about, but it's just really hard to describe Kazuo Ishiguro's writing. But I think if you're definitely into that speculative, dystopian kind of, this one's kind of more like magical realism, honestly, than the other books I've read by him. So if you're into that, I definitely think you should pick up one of his books, because I love Kazuo Ishiguro. So for my next 4-star reads, I have Ruthless Vows and Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Um, I'm gonna be honest, I loved this story. In particular, the first book, Divine Rivals, is such a great story. This is the romance that I'm looking for in my life. Like, not that pumpkin spice cafe fluffy stuff. I prefer this. This is a enemies to lovers romance story about two columnists who work in a publishing company, and they're rivals obviously because they both want to get the best columns in the paper and in the Gazette or whatever. And so it kind of starts off like kind of slow with them like not liking each other, but as you continue reading, you know, relationships grow, people change, and things happen. But this book is set in a magical world where there's gods and other things going on in the background, and that eventually become the foreground in the story. And their romance is kind of plopped in the middle of like a war, and some things happen that kind of make you question everything, but let's not talk about it. Honestly, this book was so great. The cliffhanger at the end of this book made me have to literally go run and get the second book right away. I'm pretty sure I read it from the library, which is why I don't have it. But just as zoology in general is just so powerful. I just love the relationship that Roman and Iris ended up developing. This is the romance I live for, guys. This is the romance I need in my life. I love this. But anyways, these two books got 4 stars. They're not perfect, which is why they didn't get 5, but I would definitely reread these books, and I would definitely recommend them. And the last 4-star book I read is Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. This one is a dystopian book set in the future. It honestly makes me think a lot of the anime The Promised Neverland, because basically these kids grow up in this like orphanage. They are basically learning that they're going to become harvested for organs. And that's all I'm gonna say. But it's a really interesting premise, honestly, if you're into sci-fi and, like I said, dystopian and speculative fiction. I would definitely pick this book up. It's also a movie with the guy from Spider-Man, Peter Parker. I don't know his name. Tobey Maguire? You should definitely watch the movie. The movie's just like the book. Honestly, it follows the book very closely. So I would definitely say they're both kind of one and the same. Obviously, the book always has more details. But this book is definitely just super intriguing, super impactful. So if you're looking for something kind of mind-bendy that you're probably not going to like at the end, I'll be honest, pick up Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. And then I have one 4.5-star rating of the year, and that is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Clarissa Broadbent, which is the other book in the Nightborn duet. Like I said, I really like the first one more. This book follows Araya, who is the daughter of a vampire king, but she is human as he saved her from a village when she was really young. She ends up meeting a man named Rain who is a vampire also, but he's a vampire of like a different breed because there's different breeds of vampires in this world. And they end up having to compete against each other in this like championship to become like this super godly like S tier vampire. So they both end up competing. It's also enemies to lovers, if you know what I'm saying. I think I'm realizing I actually kind of like that trope. I kind of like these enemies to lovers where like the girl's more like, I hate you, and the guy's like, sure you do. The first one I personally like a lot better, but obviously you have to read the second one just to finish off their story. But I honestly do recommend this book, like I said, if you're into romantasy and fantasy in general. They're pretty interesting characters, but she's kind of the same girl bossy type of character, so that's why it's not my favorite, but this book still got a 4.5 for me. We're entering our 5-star reads of 2025, and I'm just gonna go ahead and bring out my babies right here. So these are I don't know why I'm kind of embarrassed showing these, but I read the whole ACOTAR series again this year because I've already read them before back in 2021. I gave this series 5 stars again. I gave every book 5 stars, which I know is not possible. Like, there has to be some that are worse. If I'm gonna rank them, actually, let me rank them. This is the worst book. Then this one. Then this one. Then this one. Then this is the best one. I think. But it's because I am a Cassian lover. If you don't know, Cassian is one of the main characters in this book, and that's my man. That's my man. These books take place in a high fae, romantasy, magical world, following a group of sisters, human sisters, the Archeron sisters, that, let's just say, they stumble their way into the fairy world. I don't know, they're just a really good time. Like, they're not perfect by any means. Honestly, I don't think they deserve 5 stars from, like, a literary or technical standpoint, but from a like I had a bunch of fun, these are so entertaining standpoint, these get like 1,000 out of 5 stars. Just because I love the cast. Like people, I'm gonna put these down. I know a lot of people hate on these books because they're like, oh, it's a bunch of nothing, like it's just a bunch of freaky fairies doing all this weird stuff. I can agree with you to a certain extent. Like it is a bunch of nothing, especially in some books. Like for instance, the last one, A Court of Silver Flames, is honestly a bunch of nothing. I just personally love books that have a very large cast of characters that are easily lovable, that I can feel like I can connect to them. Sarah J Maas creates a really nice cast, honestly, in within the ACOTAR series. They honestly remind me a lot of the Lunar Chronicles cast, which is another one of my really favorite book series that I've ever read. I have officially purchased ACOTAR merch. Yeah, Valeris. Yeah. Yeah, I love this hoodie, by the way. It's new. But anyways, if you are into that romantasy and if you just haven't picked up A Court of Thorns and Roses yet, what are you doing? Get to it. Get to it right now. Alright, my next 5-star read is The Assassin's Blade, also by Sarah J Maas. I have not read Throne of Glass yet, which is kind of crazy. You know, a lot of people read that series first and then move on to A Court of Thorns and Roses, but I'm a little bit of a late bloomer, I will admit. So I'm barely starting Throne of Glass, but I'm very excited to, and I did end up giving The Assassin's Blade 5 stars. Emotional damage. No one told me how bad that book is. Okay, so a little backstory. I've actually already read the first 4 books of the Throne of Glass series, but I just never continued for some reason. So I think I'm going to actually make my way through the whole series this year, and I'm already on book 2. I'm currently on Throne of Glass, and I'm like almost finished with it, so you know, we're making our way through. The Assassin's Blade basically follows a girl named Selena Sardathian. She is an assassin and works for the King of Assassins, and she basically goes through like little challenges. It's a book made up of novellas or like smaller books. It's kind of just introducing her character, I guess. But something really bad happens at the end that causes a lot of emotional damage. And I hear that the rest of the series also like kind of hurts your soul a little bit. And you know, I'm actually looking forward to that. I told you guys earlier, I like it when my stakes are high. You know, they gotta be high, high, high up here. You know, it can't just be a bunch of nothing, guys. I need people to die. But anyways, I'm really excited to make my way through. And honestly, The Assassin's Blade, the first half wasn't that great. Once the story kind of started picking up, it definitely got pretty good. So I also definitely recommend Throne of Glass. I hear Throne of Glass is less spicy also than ACOTAR. So if that's something you're looking for also, then probably read Throne of Glass over ACOTAR, even though I haven't finished it yet. So right now, I'm still biased to ACOTAR. The next book that's 5 stars is Funny Story by Emily Henry. I think this is my first or second Emily Henry book. I actually want to say that I have read another book by her before, but this book was actually pretty good. It's the only romance book of the year that's like purely romance that I actually really liked. I gave this book 5 stars. Of course, it does follow the same exact structure that I mentioned earlier, but this one actually was really good. I really liked Emily Henry's writing. I really liked the characters. I kind of already forgot their names. But I actually really liked that book. It was definitely a funny story. It's a cute little fun time, you know, and it's not so bad to where like it's like, oh, this is so cringe. So I do recommend that book, honestly. And I mean, I gave it 5 stars, so. Alright, my next 5 star read has got to go with Alone with You in the Ether. You know, this book came out a few years ago and everyone kept recommending it, and I did not pick it up until this year. And I don't know why. That book, I don't know, like those type of books make me question, like, is love real? Does this exist in real life? I don't know. I personally really love romance books that kind of have this feeling. I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of melancholic. It's not so like, oh, romance, Valentine's fluffy. It's more like tragic. I don't know. If you read Normal People by Sally Rooney, or if you read One Day, I don't know who wrote that one, but if you read those books, this book also is very much those feelings. It's hard to explain. I don't know. It's not a happy romance. I'll say that now. But Alone with You in the Ether is definitely a love story. But basically, it follows this college professor, I'm pretty sure, and he meets this girl in an art museum, and you know, things just kind of go from there. If you're interested in that, and if, like I said, if you love Sally Rooney, and if you read One Day, I think you would like this writing style. It's kind of more poetic in a sense. Alright, guys, and now it's finally time for my top 5 books of the year. I gave all 5 of these 5 stars. And honestly, there's no order or rank with these because I couldn't come up with an order or rank, and they're just all so good. I recommend all of these. If you don't get anything from this video, read these next 5 books. One of them being Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. This was the only memoir slash nonfiction book I read the entire year. And why was it one of the best books I read this year? I think this is just a sign that I need to definitely pick up more nonfiction going into 2026, because this book was so good. It basically follows Michelle, who is actually the lead singer in Japanese Breakfast. If you don't know who Japanese Breakfast is, start listening to their music right now. I had actually really loved her music prior to even reading this book. I had no idea who she was going into the book. And me, I'm also a musician, and I guess just reading the book, I really related to a lot of the things she said, especially when it came to the musical aspect of her life. The book basically just follows her and her struggle with seeing her mom slowly pass away from cancer. It's a very interesting book because she basically ties in the cultural aspect of losing her mom, because her mom is Korean and her father is white. So you see how with losing her mom, she also feels like she's losing part of her culture and part of herself in general. So this book was just so touching. I definitely cried while reading this book, and like I said, just amazing writer. Like, and you can definitely see that in her music too. Yeah, this book was just so good. Definitely one of my top 5 books of the year. All right, the next one is The Alchemist. I read The Alchemist during the summer, and it was just so amazing. You know, I hear a lot of things about The Alchemist. A lot of people who hate that book, a lot of people who love that book. Me, I'm on the love train. I love that book. The Alchemist follows the story of a young boy. He's on a journey to find a hidden treasure in his life, basically. And along the way, he meets a lot of people, he does a lot of things, you know. And it's basically just like a reflection on life, I feel like, because there's moments in his life when he stays stagnant. He's traversing so much land, you know, he's meeting so many new people, and he's discovering so much. Like, it's a grand adventure, but then there's certain parts where he's like feels stuck. I feel like a lot of people can probably relate to that feeling of life, you know, not going how you want it to sometimes, and then sometimes going exactly how you want it to go, how you intended it to go. I don't know, just the writing in this book was definitely amazing. It's a book I definitely want to own. It's crazy because all these are my 5 favorite books, but I don't own any of them. I need to definitely buy a few of these books, and The Alchemist is definitely one of the top ones because I feel like I would just love to annotate that book and just really dig deep into the words. Also, if you're into The Little Prince, I think you would really like The Alchemist. It has kind of that same like atmosphere, I think, at least in my head. That's kind of how I was imagining it. So if you like The Little Prince, I think you would enjoy the story of The Alchemist because it also follows like a young boy. All right, the next one that is on my list is Demon Copperhead. This book was amazing. Like, before this, I probably would have never picked this book up, I'm being so honest. But my book club actually chose this book, and it was one of the best coming of age stories I've ever read. I actually really love coming of age stories in general, so this book was right up my alley, and I didn't even know it. This story follows a young boy who grew up in a pretty bad household around a lot of drugs. He's like a trailer park kid, and you just follow him as he grows older, as he encounters so many horrible people, makes bad decisions, makes good decisions, meets good people. It's just honestly a coming of age story of this young boy, and it's a perspective that I never would have looked at, or honestly never even thought of. I know it sounds really messed up, but I would have never put myself in the shoes of a child going through all of this if it wasn't for this book. Like, it opened my eyes like times 10,000. I don't know, it's so good. It talks about the foster care system. It delves a lot into drugs and drug abuse. So, if you don't want to read that, maybe you shouldn't pick it up, but it's a really good book, and it was so hard to put down. It was one of those books where I was like, I can't stop. This story is so gripping. I would definitely pick up that book. And if you're into coming of age, I would also pick up that book. My next top five is My Dark Vanessa. This is another coming of age story, but in this book we follow a young girl. We kind of do like a flashback and flash forward of her as an adult and her as a child when she was in school. And it basically just follows her and her like mental while she's basically being groomed by one of her teachers at this like school that she goes to. It can definitely be an uncomfortable read a lot of times while reading that book, but it's just so powerful, and again, it just makes you see a completely different perspective. I don't know, that book was just so good. Like, S tier. All these books are S tier, by the way, but this one is so good. Alright guys, so my last book that I'm going to be talking about is The Border Between Us. This story is another coming of age story about a young Mexican American boy, and it's just kind of about the relationship between him and his dad, and about that like Mexican culture versus the American culture. If you're born in the United States but your family's of a, if you're Mexican or black or Asian or anything like that, you probably understand that pull between the American culture and the culture that you grew up with. This book really dives into the topic of cultural expectations versus the American lifestyle, and I just love this story so much because it also really obviously talks about that father son connection, and I don't know, bro. When I finished this book, I was crying so much. If you're into stories like that, I definitely recommend checking that book out, especially since I don't hear anyone talking about that book. I kind of just picked it up from my library's like online catalog. So if you also have not heard of it, I definitely recommend giving that one a spin because that book was a lot more powerful than I thought it was going to be. It really packed a punch. And like I said, I've never heard of it. So hopefully I'm spreading the awareness to go read The Border Between Us. Alright guys, and with that, that's all the books that I read this year. I'm just really thankful to be back on YouTube talking about the things I like. I'm really excited for what's to come. I know I've said that like 800 times, but I really am. If you enjoyed the video, maybe consider subscribing. You don't have to, but and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you read any of the books I mentioned, please comment down below what you thought about them. And also let me know how many books you read last year and which ones are your favorite. I'm always looking for book recommendations. But I guess with that, guys, that's the end of the video, and I'll see you guys when I see you. Bye!